We really appreciate you joining us here on this webinar. Again, it's the second in the series that we are doing this year, and we will be recording the webinar, so I do want to make sure everyone is aware of that. We are recording the webinar so that we can make it available for those who were not able to join us live. I will say, just as a quick aside, we are thrilled at the response we are getting to the webinar series. We have well over 250 people registering for the webinars. Many of them reached out to say they could not be here live. We know that there was no one specific time we could find that would work for everyone, and that is why we are recording, so that we can continue to share this across the state and be able to make sure we're all on the same page. So again, thank you for joining. So this webinar series is being offered by the South Carolina Department of Education through the Office of Personalized Learning, and in conjunction with some partners we have at KnowledgeWorks. And so we are thrilled to have KnowledgeWorks helping us and facilitating this webinar for us. The focus of today's webinar is student ownership and flexible learning environments. And so we are thrilled to be presenting that today. I am Stephanie D'Estasio. I'm the Director of the Office of Personalized Learning at the Department of Education. Also on the webinar today, we have Lauren McCauley. She is our Lead Associate in the Office of Personalized Learning. And our facilitators are Robin Kanan from KnowledgeWorks and Brenda Neal. And so we are, as I mentioned, really happy to have Robin and Brenda working with us. If any of you are on the webinar and you are participating in our Tier 2 network support, you have met Robin and Brenda, and they will actually be back in South Carolina next week as well. So thank you, Robin and Brenda, for joining us and for helping to facilitate this webinar.
Oh, you're welcome. We're thrilled to be here.
It's exciting. Great work.
So I'm going to ask Lauren McCauley if she will talk a little bit about our personalized learning framework. We mentioned that the focus of the webinar today is student ownership and flexible learning environments. And as you can see on our framework, those are two of the topics listed there.
Absolutely. And so we spent a little bit of time on our last webinar digging into the core components. So I'm going to go through this briefly, but just to hit a few highlights. When we were developing the when we were developing the South Carolina framework, we knew that the profile of the South Carolina graduate had to be at the heart of the work, because that's really our why behind personalized learning. And all the study and research that we did told us that a critical component of personalized learning that sets it apart from all other instructional frameworks is student ownership. And so that's why you see that touching every part of this pinwheel. And then other key components of personalized learning are flexible learning environments, learner profiles, and learning pathways. And as Stephanie mentioned, our focus today will be on student ownership and flexible learning environments, digging into those pieces and hearing from some of our schools in South Carolina on how they're approaching that work. And if you visit our website, you will find this document which details which includes a little bit more detail on each of these components. And I'm going to send everyone right now in the chat box this link that's at the bottom of the screen so that you can access our website and this document in particular.
So hi, everyone. This is Robin Kanan, and I'm here with Brenda Neal. Brenda, say hi.
Hello, everybody. Glad you're here.
And we have the great privilege of working with y'all in South Carolina as you do the tiered systems of support. And the webinars are what we're having fun with. We really appreciate all the patience as we navigate and learn the intricacies of our WebEx technology. So thanks for being patient with us. We really appreciate that. I'm also here with Lori Phillips. If you were on the webinar last month with us, our first webinar, Lori is back with us. Lori, give a shout out.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here.
So Lori is helping us manage the chat box and also with some other details, so that it takes a village, just like it does with our kids and our learners and our schools and our districts. And what Stephanie and Lauren asked us to really speak about this afternoon in our time together here and focus on the good work you all are doing is around two components of your state's personalized learning framework. And we really want to start with a brief conversation around student ownership. If we go back to the graphic that we talked about briefly a moment ago, you'll see that there appear to be three arms or three almost pedestals or legs of this, if you will, of the learning framework. But you'll notice that around, surrounding that profile of the South Carolina graduate, which represents every single individual learner in the state, is student ownership. And student ownership really is a goal of ours, of yours, that we are developing that is critical to our students' continued success. And so we like to start with the student ownership because we believe it is foundational, it's critical in this thing called personalized learning that we unpacked during our first webinar. You'll see on the screen, and this was I really just pulled this out of the framework, you'll see a description of the language of how you all in South Carolina are speaking about this. So I invite you to read that for yourself. It also can be found on the document that Lauren sent you the link to in the chat box. So take just a few seconds to peruse that. One of the things that you will notice in each of these components of the framework is that they're all connected and aligned to really developing the profile of the South Carolina graduate. So those characteristics, knowledge, and skill sets that we know our students need to develop to be successful in the 21st century. And one of the pieces that we want to clarify here is to help you make the connection that for our intents and purposes with our work in South Carolina, we are referring to student ownership as that the essence of really what happens when kids drive and own their own learning. Across the country, you also may hear the words student agency, student advocacy. When kids can advocate for themselves, when they demonstrate agency, it really is synonymous with ownership, that they are co-partners in their education along with their teachers, their principals, all of the district support folks. Knowing as a student what I'm accountable for, what must be learned, how I can make some decisions about accessing and exploring with the content, and how I'm going to show you when I know it, how I'm going to provide that evidence of learning. We know that as in classrooms, best practices, teachers intuitively, I believe, know this and practice this, and we've seen this from many of your schools and know that this is happening in classrooms around the country where students are intentionally setting goals and are engaged in continuous improvement, and our teachers and our learning facilitators are monitoring that. So we're constantly reflecting on that. And as it says here in the description, those are ongoing pieces around that student ownership piece. What Brenda and I wanted to do in our exploratory conversation here this afternoon, before we turn it over to our experts in the field that are actually doing this deep work, is to give you just a few examples, a few statements of also what student ownership, student agency is, what it can be, what are some factors that measure in some considerations. And so we've given you just 4 simple bullets, and if you would allow us, we'll talk through these and just offer a couple of real-world examples for you. So if you take a look at that first bullet, Brenda, do you want to say a few things about that?
Absolutely. When students are not passive recipients, obviously we see they're going to be active learners, they're going to be researchers, investigators. You see a place for inquiry-driven learning, problem-based learning, the kinds of things that really engage students because it gives them a sense of autonomy and mastery and purpose within the work that's been designed for them. It's not sit and get. You know, some of us have gone through university courses at some point in our lives, perhaps, where it was a lot of sit and get. But this isn't what personalized learning is about. It is about the learner taking active steps to own that learning and to pursue something that's of interest and passion. So inquiry can be a part of it.
Fantastic. Teachers and students share in the decision making, and we know that roles are shifting in our learning communities and that teachers are sharing that space. And one of the ways that I've seen that happen in schools is a shift from the teacher, and I certainly understand because that was one of my roles for many years as a teacher, to instead of telling my kids how I want them to show me that you know something, to demonstrate through this task, this assignment, this project, we can get to a point where we share in that decision making, and I can turn that around and say to the students, how will you demonstrate that you know that? What evidence of learning can you provide of that learning target, that learning objective? And so there are multiple ways that this looks like, but that's an idea. Building that ownership, that agency in kids, that they're not passive passengers in the journey. How about the next one, Brenda? Students exercising voice and choice.
When we think about voice and choice, again, it goes back to what you just said, Robin. We're moving out of telling, and we're asking students. Their voice and choice doesn't have to take place in school. The learning doesn't have to take place in school. The learning environment expands for a student when he or she is driving what it is they want to have, what they want to know more about. They begin to advocate for themselves when there's student ownership of the work. I'm allowed to be creative and provide some suggestions. I can think critically about this and say, hey, what if, how about, could I show you in this way? And so we're really looking for that opportunity in the design of work for kids to own their own learning.
The curriculum with those articulated learning targets is accessible to all. So we want kids to own their own learning, to have that ownership, to have that agency as they move through the curriculum. Then we have to make sure that that curriculum is accessible. In other words, that every student, every child in the system can understand what it is they must know and be able to do, what the expectations are by which they're going to demonstrate proficiency, mastery, competency, whatever it may be called. And so again, just a few ideas around that piece of student agency, student ownership. So as you look at the next slide, what we'd like to invite you to do in the chat box, and we'll do it as if we were on a Twitter conversation, is our first question, number one, is based on what you've heard here since we've started in these few minutes, do you have any wonderings? What might you wonder? And then you would indicate that in the chat box with A1 and give us a response. I'll give you just a few minutes to do that now. When you're in the chat box, you want to make sure you're sending it to everyone. Here they come. Love the questions so far. So in future work, we're going to begin to really take a look at how this is developed in children from kindergarten all the way up through high school kids. And I know today that Saluda Trail Middle School and Wando High School may have a few ideas for us. So wonderful. What happens when kids aren't motivated? How do we develop that in our students?
Great questions.
So, Robin, as folks continue to ask questions, one common question I'm seeing a couple of times is, how do you begin to grow student ownership for students who have no self-direction or motivation? And I think we hear that a lot. It's a big concern when we talk about student ownership. So I wonder if you or Brenda have any specific thoughts on that.
So I think one of the things is in a personalized learning classroom, when you're really doing learner-centered practices, it really has to do with, and we'll speak a little more about this in our next piece around that flexible learning environment, when you really begin to develop that culture, Lauren, where you, and I'm going to go right there now because I believe that is, that's really coming up, that idea of growth mindset in the culture, so that there's an expectation from our students that learning is a constant and that you can, in fact, grow your own intelligence. We think that through the co-construction of some procedures in the class and kids having that say, they begin to understand their voice is important, and motivation begins to increase when the engagement levels increase. And so we look for intentional ways to engage those children, whole group, small group, individually. As we continue in our chat box but move into our next component here, flexible learning environments, it really is what you're speaking about. And these all are connected. So student ownership really is developed and grown through one of the components that we spend a lot of time in, and we really, I think all of us as facilitators in this work have a passion for, and that's this idea of a flexible learning environment. And so we want to have you take a look at what's on the screen, knowing that learning takes place all the time, everywhere, not just in the classroom, not just when the teacher's present, as our learners work toward achieving that profile of a South Carolina graduate. We know that learning takes place beyond the school day. We know that it takes place beyond the school walls, in community events kids are at, when they're at other intramurals and other learning experiences that they have. And so what does that look like when the environment, both physical environment and that cultural environment, if you will, is structured and adjusted to meet the needs of all learners? You have to take into consideration some staffing, some operational elements, that growth mindset culture that's so critically important, standard operating procedures, again, that transparency. So kids don't have to come to me to ask what the procedure is. We've developed that together. We've put it into their words. They understand and can be independent as they move through the learning experiences. Student voice and choice is not by accident, or it's not random acts. It's by design. We've intentionally built in opportunities and expectations for them to lean into that learning and be a driver in that. The use of flexible groupings in our instructional strategies, kind of that idea of the workshop model in all content areas, where kids are receiving real-time student supports, either for some extra support if they're having difficulties getting it, or if they're ready to move on, we're not holding them hostage because my lesson plan said, well, we're going to be on this topic for 2 weeks and you're all ready to set to go, so you'll just have to hang in there with us. That idea of goal setting, it's not what I want you to do in class, it's let's construct this together so the student is able to move down their pathway. And again, as we've said before, those time structures and schedules become adjustable so that time does not become the driver of the day, but in fact, the needs of the students in their learning becomes the drivers. And again, we're not suggesting that these are easy fixes, but we certainly know that there are lots and lots of strategies out there for getting to this place where this becomes common practice throughout our schools. As we get ready to have our guests today tell us a little bit more about their practices and their journey in the space of personalized learning, we'd invite you all to engage in the chat box again with something that you may be wondering. This will be an A2 around this idea of flexible learning environment. Again, I would invite you to respond in the chat box as your questions help to inform our work and to really present in real time for you all what you need and what you're thinking about. So please do that. Questions around how we manage 4 or 5 groups at a time, how do we manage multiple ranges of students, around flexible groupings. Flexible does not automatically mean it's personalized. That's right. Just like hands-on learning doesn't automatically mean it's rigorous, right, or it's an inquiry experience. So point taken. At a systems level, how are we using time, talent, and resources to restructure some of our traditional processes and protocols that would support personalized learning? All good questions. Lauren and Stephanie, do you want to set us up now for some actual in the field, real-time experiences that we're going to hear from our guests this afternoon?
Sure. So we've invited 2 schools who are working with us and who have been exploring these concepts of student ownership through flexible learning environments. And we wanted to give them a chance to share a little bit of their journey. I think they would probably be the first ones to tell you that this is a journey, that it is not a quick fix. Some of those exact questions that we're seeing in the chat box of how do you do this, part of the reason we wanted to include Saluda Trail Middle School and Wando High School were some perspectives on the how. And I will tell you, while we do not have an elementary school on this particular section, the things that you are going to hear from Saluda Trail and Wando are things which we also are hearing from many of our elementary school partners. And so one of the elementary schools we mentioned last time definitely is participating in many of these as well. So we're going to highlight a little bit about Saluda Trail Middle School and also Wando High School. And we're going to start by just asking for each of them to tell us a little bit about why you decided to implement personalized learning. So why did you decide to kind of make a conscious effort to go on this journey of personalizing learning for your students? So we're going to start with Saluda Trail, and then we'll let Wando chime in.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. This is Elissa Cox, the principal at Saluda Trail. We are a school of choice for STEAM. So for us, we have dabbled with project-based learning, but knew that there was a need for us to also marry that with response to intervention and meeting students where they were and what their needs exactly were. So personalized learning for us, we began really with a blended learning book study from a keynote speaker that then segued in for us to personalized learning. So we were able to utilize some of the tools that we have, such as Mastery Pathways through Canvas, Mastery Connect, our one-to-one devices, our real-time data with some of those assessments that we were getting, to be able to truly personalize and begin a blended learning environment in our classroom that allowed us to do PBL through station work, but also true remediation and enrichment.
Perfect, thank you. And Wando, do you want to tell a little bit about why you decided to go down this journey of personalizing?
Yes. My name is Chaz Coker. I'm an assistant principal here at Wando High School. We kind of got started a couple of years ago on, am I speaking? Oh, I am. All right, am I hearing? Everyone can hear me?
Yes.
All right, good deal. So we got started a couple of years ago. One of our teachers at a sister school down here in Charleston County was hearing about these amazing things that this math teacher was doing in their classroom. So the teacher came up to me at the beginning of the year saying, hey, can we go visit? Can we go visit? We finally, a couple of weeks later, went to go visit and just kind of fell in love with all the different stuff we saw going on at their school. And at Wando, we definitely had a need, immediate need, with our math classes and some of our remedial English classes. So we picked a cohort of about 7 teachers that were really gung-ho, that really wanted to get involved, that were committed to the work. And they took about a summer to kind of, what would normally probably take a curriculum team about 1 or 2 years to do, they somehow managed to do in about 2 months. So they got really involved, really got involved with the work, really got in depth, and they decided, we gave them the green light and gave them the okay to do it. And so we started off with that, and our teachers really, we started to see amazing success within these classrooms. We started with our foundations and our intermediate classes and some of our English 2 and English 4 classes in English. And immediately right off the bat, we saw just looking at numbers wise, our failures came down by 50% in those classes. And we have math intervention at the school, and before you knew it, these foundations intermediate kids that some would have been labeled earlier as students that were struggling or students that couldn't do the math were actually tutoring our upper level algebra kids in math intervention. It was incredible to see. We got positive feedback from the parents, and it was great to see other teachers seeing that this work was going on and seeing the gains that they were making and the cool things that were happening. So it started to grow, and it really kind of got us focused on, at Wando, we do a lot of things great, but we were kind of became stale in the terms of what we were doing academically and what we were doing instructionally, and we wanted to be able to stretch that bar and kind of do that. So we started with these 7 teachers, and within a year, it grew to about 21 teachers. To this day, we have about 80 to 88 teachers involved in this type of work, or starting to get involved with this type of work, and trying to infuse it into their classroom. It's been very much a bottom-up approach with us. This came from the teachers. We were very fortunate that coincidentally at the same time, it became a push within our district as well, so it married up quite nicely, and we've gotten great support from our district and great support from our teachers, and so that's kind of our developed and why we started and how we started at Wando and got that going.
Stephanie, hey, this is Robin, and I'm at the controls. So if you need another slide as you guys are talking, just let me know. I'm trying to keep up with you and work within the slides, but just let me know.
Thank you, Robin. One of the things I would say that I've heard from both Saluda Trail and Wando, and I think you probably heard it in what they were saying, and interestingly enough, I also saw it in some of the chat wonders or questions that came up, but I definitely heard from both of you. Not only was this a way for you to better serve your students and meet their needs, it was also these strategies and this approach really actually helps your teachers better manage. I think it's one of those things up front where we often have many initiatives and many tools and resources and strategies to choose from, but figuring out how to use those and how to best implement those things is a challenge. And so at both schools, I think you probably heard, they really did this. Chaz used the word bottom-up approach. Toledo Trail talked about small group study groups that they're using so that they are providing that support to their teachers to be able to move forward. And so I think that's a little bit of that why. It's providing support to teachers so that they can do their best, but also at the heart of that is so that every child can reach their potential. So the other thing, the next question I would ask is earlier in the webinar, we discussed, and really the whole webinar, student ownership and flexible learning environments. And so think about help us understand what these components, student ownership through flexible learning environments particularly, what does that look like in your school? Can you help us sort of see a picture of that or a couple of examples?
Right, I can go ahead and speak on some of that. Over at Wando, we've a couple of different things we have going on. One thing we have is, especially with our foundations and intermediate classes, we become very flexible with the timeline of which students can complete the work. So, you know, traditionally, the end of the semester, they don't have the work done, they fail, or you have to retake the course or move on. So we've kind of fudged that timeline a little bit. We've kind of done this by backing the two subjects back to back and keeping them with the same teacher and getting a little creative there. And if I'm getting a little bit into the weeds of it a little bit, we kind of backed them up so the kid basically has, a student basically has 90 minutes of year-long math. And we kind of fluctuate where that foundation ends and where the intermediate begins, and kind of depends on where the student is. And we're kind of able to kind of lapse that on with summer school at the end. So we still keep within those grading deadlines, but we're able to kind of do grade change forms and stuff like that. We've had to get a little creative within that, but that's one way we've worked within the system of those flexible learning environments of being on the kids' time instead of on our time or on a deadline time. That's one way we've kind of counteracted that. And
if you can see me now, you'd know that we were clapping in the room. Yay!
In Toledo Trail, can you give us an example of a way that this looks in your building? I know that for both of you, I'm sure there are a multitude of examples you can give us, but just a couple of quick, what does this look like? Oh wait, Toledo Trail, we're not hearing you really clearly.
Okay, you should be unmuted now, Toledo Trail.
Okay, can you hear me? Hello?
Not very well.
Hello?
Yes.
How about now?
Yes, that's better.
Okay. Hey, I'm Becky Funderburg, I'm instructional coach at Toledo Trail Middle School. And our learning environments look different in each grade level, depending on our teacher's comfort level with this new initiative. But for example, our 7th grade math, in their PLCs every week look closely at their data and have really taken ownership in all of the students in 7th grade and mix up the students based on their level of mastery with the content standards. And then do some reassessment. So they're able to mix the kids up, do some reteaching or enrichment or remediation, whichever way you want to go with that, and are able to really meet the needs of all the individual kids. In our school district, we're fortunate enough to have Canvas as our learning management system. So we have a lot of our teachers utilizing the components of that system in order to really remediate students or to accelerate students based on how they are doing on different assessments in the classroom.
Perfect, thank you. So what about sharing some different successes? I'm sure that there are lots of anecdotal examples. I know there are because I've had conversations with both of these schools and seen some of the great work coming out of these schools. Talk to us a little bit about some successes, some things maybe your teachers are trying that you're excited that they're even that they're trying. I will say to the folks on the webinar, one of the things when we talked earlier about culture, both of these schools, there is almost a tangible culture of not being afraid to try. And so I think that environment and that culture supported by the leadership in these buildings, which is saying to teachers, if it's what's best for kids, let's try it, is definitely helpful. So what are some of the things that your teachers are trying, some successes that you're having?
Well, I think, Stephanie, that you are correct. It is about culture and about leadership. We do have to give those teachers the comfort level to step out there and take a risk. So working in small cohorts in our building, and we've probably got about 60 to 70% of our teachers that have completed some of the cohort work that we've done with blended and personalized learning. And they're beginning to start with small chunks of that. And some are high flyers and moving faster than others, some entire content PLCs. But most of our teachers are utilizing some version of a work plan to help students find ownership or gain ownership of their own learning. And those work plans look different from classroom to classroom. Some of those work plans are divided up strategically by groups based upon mastery, and students within the work plan have voice and choice to select assignments or tasks within that. We have other teachers that are truly conferencing with students, so it's less teacher-directed. They're having more conferences with students where students are leading those conferences. They're understanding where their mastery is. They're giving a choice of a personalized pathway that you can kind of see there, and they're selecting options to help them be successful with some of the content or skills that they are lacking. So it looks different in different rooms and different content areas for sure, but it's allowing those teachers to go as far as they need to, just as Becky mentioned with our 7th grade math. Our building has been comfortable with transforming their schedule. We've done a lot of work with that, with the PBL process, so they're used to taking chunks of time and working with it a little differently in a flexible manner. So now they're just transferring that to let the data drive it and allow personalized pathways for each student.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you, Robin, if you go back to that last slide for me again for key takeaways for Wando, I would 100% agree with that wholeheartedly. With I think the most important part about this whole piece is, as administrators, we worry about test scores and worry about just a whole bunch of things. And I think just taking out the fear out of teachers, saying, we want you to try this, we want you to go out and do this, we want you to do that, and just say, I'm behind you 100%. And I feel like that meant a ton to our teachers, meant that that they could go out there, and we like the phrase fail forward, that you go out there, you try, learn from what we did, and try again, and that they're not afraid that if an administrator or somebody walks in the room that and it's going to be a little chaotic that day, that they're going to get dinged, or they get a bad evaluation, that they're going to they're going to suffer because of something going on, that they have that freedom to try and fail forward. And you want to strategically do it, but be able to have that. And looking at successes here, I could go all day about some of the best things I've heard is a teacher come up to me after teaching for 22, 23 years, was thinking about getting out of the profession, and then all of a sudden they try a piece of this or try a piece of this in their classroom, and they're coming up to me and saying, I'm rejuvenated. I feel like I'm starting my profession all over again. It's hard work, but it's good work. I'm seeing gains in my kids. I'm seeing gains in the test scores. I feel like my kids are truly understanding. Finally, in my classroom, we had one teacher that, was always the one that if you're going to get a phone call, it's probably going to be about this teacher. And they started working on this, with personalized learning and doing different aspects, and it rejuvenated her career. The kids are excited to go to her classroom now. She's excited to have the kids in her classroom. So you hear stories about that all the time, and that just gets you going. And you get kids that have come up to me and said, you know what, I have not understood math one day in my whole career in school, but I get math now. I understand math now. I'm able to learn math, and I'm excited to go to my math classroom. And it gives you chill bumps, and it gets you excited. And there's so many stories that I could share with that are anecdotal, but I feel like those are some of the biggest successes we've seen is is just that the success within our teachers and the excitement, because we always say we want to not only personalize it for our kids, we also want to personalize it for our teachers and give them those avenues to try something out, and just seeing that success come from them. I think that's one of the biggest things we've seen, and that's been exciting to be a part of.
Yeah, so one of the things, some of the things I wrote down as you guys were talking, and I'm certainly seeing it, is this, you hear it, although you didn't use this word, I heard from both schools that through student conferencing, through really getting to know your kids, you're definitely building relationships. And so you talked about that culture of collaboration and teamwork, and it's not just collaboration and teamwork among the staff. I mean, that's definitely very clear. I heard you talking about professional learning communities and really getting a chance to support one another. But it also very clearly came through that it is about relationships and culture and collaboration and partnering with your students. And so students really beginning to understand what it is that they have to know and be able to do, and having them be a partner in that so that they set those goals with the teachers. And I heard that in both schools, and so I think that's really important. It also made me think about the fact that personalized learning is definitely not a prescription. It is not a prescriptive approach, and I think if you probably heard from both schools, there's no one way to do this. It's really about starting somewhere. I think that it actually really honors the fact that teaching is both an art and a science. And so it allows teachers to implement that artistic piece, that creative piece, figuring out what it is that each kid needs, but also really heavily relying on that science piece. What is best practice? How do we make sure that the learning is actually happening, and how do we have evidence that that learning is happening? And so it really marries those two sides of teaching to ensure that learning is happening for all kids. And so I think that I heard very clearly in both schools. What about, and that kind of leads me to that next piece, so because personalized learning is not a prescription, what about some challenges or some lessons learned, some things you might want to share about as you are on this journey of personalizing things for all of your students in your school? What do you want to share with us about those challenges or lessons?
I can get started. With Wanda, a couple of our challenges, and you say it's definitely a journey. Speaking so far today, I've given you a lot of the highs, but there definitely have been some lows as well. One thing that we want to do is make the right fit with the right teacher. As Stephanie just said, there's many different ways to do this. There's many different. It's not a silver bullet. It's not a one prescription. And starting off with that, we had such great success with our freshman classes. With math, we tried to expand it to our sophomore with geometry, and so we didn't tell some teachers to try it out, but kind of give that ball and told, kind of talk it up with them, kind of say, hey, why don't you give this a shot? And they weren't 100% bought in, and it showed almost immediately. The teachers that weren't completely bought in they were kind of loud, and and so we kind of saw some negative feedback from that. So what our key takeaway from that it's exactly that. It's not a prescription. We can't just take what one teacher did in one classroom and multiply it over and over again. We got to kind of try to fit it to those kids, to that teacher in that classroom at the same time. And that was kind of a big lesson we kind of learned from that as well. And another thing that we are constantly combating is the fact of where it kind of started, and it's expanding to some of our AP and higher level classes as well, is that there's this notion that this is an Apex, an E2020, an Edgenuity, online, that kids are just learning online kind of deal. And yes, we do use digital tools, and obviously use digital tools in personalized learning, but that's not the end all be all, and it's not. It's the exact opposite of that. So it's still trying to change that mindset with some of our more old school teachers, some of our teachers that, even though we have constant PDs, of just having honest conversations and back and forth, and sometimes you walk away agreeing to disagree, but at the same time, that's one thing we battle right now too, is just kind of that mindset. This is, just a computer course in E2020 and that kind of deal. So just finding different ways to combat that and kind of go beyond that. So.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, Saluda Trail has sent me a message saying they have announcements going on. So
Yeah, we're good now, Stephanie.
This is the reality of recording right at missile time.
You wanted real time. For us, some of the challenges were, much like Wando stated, it's not just about technology. It's how you're using some of the technology and resources we have to leverage the work that we're doing to make it engaging for students and to allow them a personalized path. As he stated, in terms of teacher readiness, that is a concern. It's important that we model for them. So much of the professional development that we did, we tried to model blended learning and personalized learning for our teachers so that they could at least get some sort of visual of what that may look like in their classroom, providing them with personalized pathways for some PD and going at their pace. We do have still those traditional teachers, and so it's just continuously encouraging them to try one small thing in their classroom, providing support with our instructional coach and our digital learning coach to make them feel comfortable and sharing in their successes and being okay when they fail. Another challenge is onboarding your students, because this is different for your students, especially at the middle school level, as I'm sure at any other K through 12 level. There's a readiness for your students, and there's a cultural shift in your classroom that has to happen so they know how to function and learn at this level and truly take student ownership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that was very helpful. So both of you, for both schools, if we can think a little bit about your next steps in this journey. So where do you see yourself going next? We've talked often about personalized learning as sort of a landscape, and I think that folks have definitely heard from both of you there's no one way to do this, which is really, in some ways, while sometimes it's easy to have a prescriptive thing, and in some ways it's a little harder when you don't, because you're figuring out where to start. What are your next steps, and how are you deciding where you're going to head with this? Oh wait, Saluda Trail, I think we are not getting your audio.
Oh no.
Oh wait, that was better. Hold on.
Is that good?
Yes.
Okay. So at Saluda Trail, we have multiple cohorts of teachers that are traveling on this journey. So it has really forced us to personalize our professional development as well, because we have some teachers that are fully into this and doing it in the classroom, and then we have those other teachers that are still waiting for this to pass, thinking that it will. So we're just doing a balancing act right now. We're trying to motivate those that want to continue to do traditional teaching, whereas we're also trying to continue to push those that are accelerated teachers. It's just like having a classroom full of students, to be honest. But our goal is that everybody would be doing this work throughout the school building successfully, while also holding true to our STEAM program that we have going on in our school as well.
At Wando?
At Wando, kind of our next steps is the fact that this has been so organic within our teachers, and it's kind of been like, hey, I want to do this, so I'm going to figure out a way to do it. It's trying to make now systematic changes within the school of trying to foster this work and go beyond those kind of, we call tier one teachers, of the high flyers, the ones you don't have to worry about, the ones that have a great idea and they're going to run with it. So just trying to find ways to facilitate that. With the same thing as Saluda Trail, we're looking at different ways to model our PD, trying to think of different ways next year where we can personalize PD for our teachers, and that they can go, and depending on what level they are and where they're at, they can go to this session or that session and kind of change our PD model to kind of mirror what we kind of want to see in the classroom. So that's kind of some things we're working on for next year and trying to develop this year. We're also kind of looking at, we kind of call tier two teachers, the ones that are ready to get on board. They need some direction, they need some guidance, and so we're kind of come up with structured ways of kind of hey, why don't you give this a shot, and maybe kind of putting some of this down on paper in some more systematic ways of kind of helping, kind of giving them multiple ways of figuring this out. Like I said, there's not just one prescription. So that's kind of our next steps, is just kind of looking at making it more systematic, because it has been so organic, and kind of figuring out a way to trying to change that system within the school to help support this work for everybody and not just our high flyers. So.
Perfect. I love that we're hearing from both schools that you are making a very concerted effort to change your own practices within the school to model professional learning, so that you can show what this looks like, that it is not just about you using your technology like we talked about, that it is not just about, kind of what, like we talked about at the beginning of the webinar. It's not about sit and get for teachers or for students. It's about we have a vision, we know where we need to go, we set goals, and we figure out a pathway to be able to meet those goals. And our standards and our expectations are high, but we are going to work together and figure out how to get there. And whether we are talking about building professional learning for teachers, or whether we are talking about helping students attain the profile of the South Carolina graduate through the curriculum standards, that we're all approaching that in ways that make sense for a wide variety of learners, so that every single child and every single teacher can attain that. So, Robin, I think you're gonna talk a little bit about question 3, correct?
Sure, happy to do that. So as we kind of begin to close out our time here this afternoon, we wanted to really, again, hear from you. We really appreciate your questions, your thoughts, your wonderings, your ahas that you have so honestly shared in the chat box. It's great. And all those questions, concerns, lessons learned are valuable and valid. We wish we had the answers to all of those figured out, but we know that together in our collective work we can get there. And it's always helpful when we have schools and learning communities that are doing the heavy lifting and the hard work share some of their early wins. I want to thank both of our guests here this afternoon for being so candid in their conversations with. What we'd like to hear from you as we kind of close this out this afternoon are really 2 things. So A3, a response. What did you hear today in our short hour that we've had together that really excites you around this idea of personalized learning with student ownership and flexible learning environments? So if you could respond A3 for what would excite you, what you kind of get charged up about, amped up about. We were giving each other high fives as we were listening to our folks, and we were dropping the mic as we were listening, because some of what Saluda, Trails, and Wando were sharing was just made us happy. So what excited you about what you heard? We'd also like you then to think about our final question that we have for you this afternoon, and that would be any remaining questions. And again, we know that for every solution or answer or strategy, it sometimes generates more questions, and that's called inquiry, and we like that. We like this exploration and investigation. But if there's anything specific that you were thinking about in regards to what you heard today, or would like to explore more, had questions about, if you could indicate that in the chat box under A4, we would so appreciate that. And as we do that, Steph, we've got some kind of final thoughts. So questions in the chat box that you may have remaining that we will certainly promise to address?
Yes. So while I see a lot of those great things coming in the chat box, and I am really thankful that so many of you are here and beginning to share your stories, we know that there are lots more stories just like those we are hearing from Saluda Trail and from Wando. We know that there are teachers across the state really making this shift to student-centered learning. And so we want to be able to hear those stories, we want to be able to celebrate those stories, and we want to be able to support teachers in this work. And so we are asking folks to really begin to use this hashtag, PersonalizeSC, as a way, number one, to connect with one another. If you are interested in this work in personalizing learning for kids, and you are on this journey, it is a fabulous thing to be able to connect with other teachers in South Carolina who are doing this work as well. And this is a great way to be able to find one another, is just, if you open up Twitter and you search that hashtag, PersonalizeSC, you immediately find some other people who you can follow and who you can reach out to and connect with so that you can follow up. We want to be able to celebrate these stories. We are looking forward to taking as many opportunities as we can to celebrate the successes that are happening across our state. And so we want to find you with that PersonalizeSC hashtag. So please help us to do that. As many of you know, we have created a tiered system of support for schools and districts who are on this journey to personalizing learning. And the three-tiered system, Exploration, this webinar series is part of Exploration, just learning about what's going on with personalized learning in the state and what are the elements. We have schools and districts involved in a launch piece. They are making, as you heard Wando and Saluda Trail talking about, they are making plans. They are figuring out how to help support their teachers and to build this out from being just one or two classrooms here or there, but to having a more knowing what their why is and having a vision for their school. And then in our advanced implementation phase, we are looking at schools and in some cases we have full districts in South Carolina who are they've been engaged in much of this work for quite some time, and they are making that shift to say, how do we begin to make systemic changes? How do we ensure that all means all and that every learner in our building is well supported and reaching their fullest potential? And how do we make sure that every teacher is fully supported and growing as a professional? And so our schools in that advanced implementation phase are there too. We have another webinar coming up on March 14th. We are going to be focusing on learner profiles and pathways, and so we invite you to join us. We invite you to share this information with your friends. We also have, and there's not a slide for this, but we do have an inquiry lab coming up March 15th. So March 14th, we have a webinar. March 15th, we have an inquiry lab. And so if you are interested in an inquiry lab, that we are actually going to be looking at flexible learning environments through a K-12 lens. What does it look like? We're going to do some visits in an elementary school, a middle school, and a high school. We're actually going to be going to Rock Hill. Saluda Trail is one of the schools we'll be visiting. We would love to have you join us. It gives us a chance to interact with those teachers and hear directly from them and their students about the work that they are doing at all three levels, elementary, middle, and high. So please plan to join us for our webinar. Please join us for the Inquiry Lab on March 15th if you are interested. And you can reach out to any one of us to get more information. Thank you very much for joining us on the webinar. Thank you very, very much to Wando and Saluda Trail for sharing a little glimpse of your journey with us. And I'm going to turn it back over to Robin.
Thank you so much, everyone. What a great way to spend an hour this afternoon in hearing the good work and deepening our understanding of this thing called personalized learning. Lots of questions that certainly inform our thinking, and I think the good news is that collectively we've got strategies that we know are working with our kids, that are getting us results, that are bringing a higher level of satisfaction to our teaching force, and also are the right things to do for our kids. We appreciate your time today, South Carolina. We would invite you to stay with us in the series of webinars as we move to next month. You certainly will be hearing from Lauren and Stephanie, and with that, I believe you may all go into now and end your meeting or leave the meeting. We're going to have it available at some point. We've recorded it, and we'll have it available for you. And with that, we'd like to say thanks so much for your time today, and have a good evening.